All right, let's dive in. We're tackling the 2019 Black Christmas remake today.
Ah, yes, the remake.
Yeah, and you guys sent in a ton of reviews, so
Big stack of them.
let's break them down, see what we can learn.
Sounds good.
So this isn't your typical slasher flick, right?
Oh,
It tries to get all woke, I guess.
Woke.
Throws in some social commentary about,
Toxic masculinity.
all that stuff, yeah. And, well, the reviews are calling out some big misses.
Interesting.
Yeah, the first thing that pops out is this idea of failed fusion.
Failed fusion.
Like, the movie tries to be all,
Message.
but it totally sacrifices, like, the genuine horror.
Scares.
Yeah, exactly. The stuff that made the original so effective.
Yeah.
So it's like, does it even work as a horror movie? We're going to find out.
Let's get into it then.
All right, so one example they highlight is how they handled the
antagonist.
the bad guy, yeah, the antagonist. So in the original, you have this, like...
Creepy human stalker.
Right, totally creepy. But
Yeah.
here, we get this, like, supernatural entity.
Oh, really? Yeah, and get this. It's supposed to represent, like, toxic male power or something. The review actually quotes a line that calls it, and I quote, a swirling mass of CGI black goo.
Black goo.
Yeah. They said it looked more like
A rejected special effect.
Exactly. From Ghostbusters or something.
Okay, so not scary, more like...
Silly.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I see that.
And that kind of leads into another big critique. The characters themselves.
Okay, what about them?
Both the good guys and the bad guys just feel, I don't know, kind of flat.
Flat. Like they lack depth.
Yeah, they're not complex.
And that's a problem when you're dealing with these nuanced social issues, right?
It's a huge EE problem, yeah.
Okay, so let's break down those characters a bit more. They specifically call out Riley, the main character, right?
Yeah, Riley.
She's a survivor of sexual assault.
Yeah, a really crucial part of her story.
But the review argues she's not, like, developed beyond that trauma.
Right.
She becomes a symbol, not a real person,
I get that. And that makes it tough for the audience to connect.
Yeah, emotionally, for sure.
Okay, and on the flip side, the antagonists, these fraternity brothers,
This guy's.
they're portrayed as these, like, caricatures of toxic masculinity.
Oh, yeah, way over the top.
I think one review even called them like a...
Frat boy Voltron of misogyny.
Oh my gosh. That's harsh.
But is it even effective? Or does it just, weaken the whole point?
Yeah, good question.
Like, does making them so evil just make the critique less impactful? Because another review actually argues that by doing that, by making them so cartoonishly evil, they miss a chance to explore the more, like, everyday forms of toxic masculinity.
Oh, the more subtle stuff.
Yeah, the stuff that actually flies under the radar.
That makes sense.
And speaking of things that are, like, not subtle at all,
What's that?
the dialogue, apparently it's a huge E problem in this movie.
Oh, no.
Yeah, one review called it, like,
Preachy.
that's the word, and unnatural. Like, the characters are delivering, speeches, not having, actual conversations.
But they're reading from Twitter threads or something.
Exactly. And they pull out this one line from Riley where she's, like, confronting one of the antagonists.
Okay, what'd you say?
She goes, "You're part of the problem. The patriarchy is literally dripping from your pores like toxic sludge."
Whoa. That's a bit much, yeah.
I mean, I get what they're going for, but...
Too on the nose.
Yeah, way too on the nose. It's like we're trying to watch a horror movie, not,
Attend a lecture.
Exactly. It's all about that balance, You want to engage with these...
Important themes.
Yeah, but you can't sacrifice the,
Believability.
of the characters, yeah. And the whole tone of the film.
Right, you got to maintain that horror vibe.
And this leads us to another major criticism, the atmosphere.
The atmosphere.
Or should I say the LASEK of atmosphere?
Because the original Black Christmas
Oh, I was so good at that.
created this sense of dread.
Like slow burn tension,
It gets under your skin.
But this remake, it's all
Jump scare.
jump scares and cheap thrills, yeah.
One review even calls it a missed opportunity.
And they point out that the holiday setting, which was so creepy in the original,
Right. Christmas lights, isolated houses, the snow.
it's prime horror movie material.
They barely use it here, though.
It's like they just slapped a Santa hat on a generic slasher flick and called it a day.
Bummer.
And speaking of things that are visually lacking, the
Cinematography?
yeah, it gets called out too.
What are they saying?
They're using words like uninspired and generic, which for horror is basically a death sentence.
It's rough.
One review even says that the camera work feels as lifeless as the black goo monster.
Oof. Harsh, but,
Probably true.
Yeah, and this ties back to the whole supernatural element thing.
The black goo.
Yeah, it feels out of place, and visually it just doesn't hold up, apparently.
Like, one review described it as a swirling mass of unconvincing CGI that looks like it was rendered on a 2005 laptop.
Yikes.
It sounds like they tried to do too much, you know?
Too ambitious.
Yeah. Supernatural stuff, social commentary, complex themes, and it just ended up a mess.
Too many ingredients in the pod.
But there's one more critique I want to get to before we move on.
Okay, what is it?
This idea of thematic overreach.
Thematic overreach. All right, let's hear it.
So they acknowledge that the movie's trying to tackle these big issues like sexual assault and systemic sexism, but they argue that the execution is just
overly simplistic.
Yeah, like way too heavy-handed.
I see.
One review actually said the movie feels more like a lecture than a genuinely unsettling experience.
And they're not wrong.
So can a horror movie actually be both scary and thought-provoking?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Or do those two aims, like, inherently clash? We'll keep unpacking that as we go.
Sounds good to me.
Because there's a lot more to dig into with this Black Christmas remake.
Let's do it. So, picking up on that thematic overreach idea, the reviews acknowledge the film's intentions, like they're not totally dismissing it.
Right, it's not like they're saying, don't even try.
But it's the how, the execution, that falls short.
Yeah, like they took these really complex, heavy issues.
Sexual assault, systemic sexism, female empowerment.
And it's like they just tossed them all into the horror movie pot without a recipe.
Just threw them all in.
And the result, not exactly a gourmet meal.
More like a college student trying to cram a whole semester into a 5-minute presentation.
Too much information, not enough depth.
No nuance.
And that lack of nuance, that's a recurring problem.
Yeah, the reviews keep coming back to it.
Because these issues, they're complex, they have layers, you know.
Historical context, societal context, it's all tangled up.
And just reducing it to this, like, simple good versus evil thing.
Yeah, like the movie does.
It kind of undermines the whole conversation, doesn't it?
And it undermines the horror, too.
So instead of, like, making you think, it just feels...
preachy?
Yeah, preachy and oversimplified.
And that ties right back into the dialogue, right?
Oh, the dialogue, yeah.
When characters sound like they're reading talking points instead of having real conversations,
it just takes you right out of the moment.
Shatters that suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, and that's so crucial for horror.
Crucial, yeah.
Like, you're trying to get spooked, but then you get hit with a line that sounds like...
Sociology 101.
Exactly. And suddenly, you're not scared, you're just...
rolling your eyes.
Yep. Eye roll central. And the reviews even point out this one scene...
Oh, which one?
Riley, she's in the middle of a chase scene, right? Running for her life, and she stops to give this whole mini lecture on the history of the patriarchy.
Oh, no.
It's so out of place. Like, who does that?
Talk about killing the mood.
So we're back to that question. Can a horror film actually be both scary and thought-provoking?
Or are those two things just like oil and water?
Yeah.
They don't mix.
Well, one review offered a really interesting perspective on this.
Oh, yeah. What was it?
They said the key is subtlety.
Subtlety.
And subtext.
Ah, got it.
They pointed to Get Out, The Babadook as examples.
Yeah. Those are good ones.
Movies that weave the social commentary in, but without sacrificing the scares.
So they don't hit you over the head with the message.
No, it's more like...
Let the horror unfold naturally. Let the audience put the pieces together.
I like that.
Like those hidden image pictures.
It's on the magic eye thing.
Yeah, you got to look beyond the surface to see the deeper image.
And that takes skill, right?
On both sides. The filmmaker and the audience.
So where does this Black Christmas remake go wrong?
Well, it feels like they were so focused on making a statement.
The statement, yeah.
That they forgot about what actually makes horror work.
The atmosphere, the tension, the chills.
They're checking off boxes on a social justice agenda instead of crafting an experience, you know.
A scary experience.
Yeah, a truly frightening one.
And it's such a shame because horror... it has this amazing potential to tackle these issues.
In a really visceral way, yeah.
It can stay with you, like, long after the movie's over.
Not just because it scared you, but because it made you think.
Think about something in a new way.
It's exactly.
Like, think about Invasion of the Body Snatchers or Night of the Living Dead.
Classics.
They terrified people, sure, but they also tapped into these deeper anxieties.
About conformity, social unrest, civilization crumbling.
And it was all baked into the horror itself, not just...
tacked on as an afterthought.
Right. So it's not that horror and social commentary are incompatible.
Well, it can be done.
It just takes a really delicate touch, a skillful blend.
To make it both entertaining and thought-provoking.
That's the challenge, I guess. Yes.
It is. And this Black Christmas remake, even though it's ambitious, it doesn't quite stick the landing.
But hey, let's shift gears a bit.
Okay, what's next?
The reviews also talk about the film's use of darkness and shadows.
Darkness and shadows, huh?
You might think, well, duh, it's a horror movie.
Gotta have darkness.
But the reviews point out that there's a difference between using darkness effectively.
Right, it's not just about turning off the light.
Because in horror, darkness, it's more than just an aesthetic, right?
It's about creating atmosphere, building that suspense.
Playing on our primal fear of the unknown.
Exactly, the stuff we can't see.
So how does this film use, or I guess misuse, darkness?
Well, the reviews say that the film uses darkness, sure, but it doesn't use it well.
So like darkness for the sake of darkness.
More of a style choice than a deliberate tool for suspense.
Just because you make it dark doesn't automatically make it scary, right?
Right, you need more than that.
You need that interplay of light and shadow revealing just enough.
To get the audience curious, then snatching it away again.
Keep them guessing, keep them on the edge of their seats.
Yeah, that sense of unease, like something's lurking in the shadows.
That you're not quite sure what.
And this film misses that mark.
How so?
One review compared the darkness to a heavy-handed Instagram filter.
An Instagram filter.
Yeah, just slapped on there. No real purpose.
Style over substance.
And they pointed out scenes where the darkness was so thick you couldn't even see what was happening.
So instead of enhancing the horror, it's actually a distraction.
Totally.
And this brings us to another visual element that gets critiqued, the black goo.
Oh, the black goo again?
We've talked about how it feels out of place.
Narratively? Yeah.
But visually, does it at least, look creepy?
Not really.
Oh, no.
Their reviews were pretty brutal.
What did they say?
Unconvincing, cheesy, like something from a really low-budget 90s sci-fi movie.
Wow.
One even compared it to sentient silly putty.
Ouch.
So not only is it jarring, it's also distracting.
Missed the mark on multiple levels.
Yeah, and it kind of speaks to a broader critique of the film's whole aesthetic.
The look of the film.
Yeah, they use words like generic and uninspired.
Which, for a horror movie, that's not good.
Not good at all.
Because horror relies so heavily on atmosphere and that visual storytelling.
Creating a mood, a feeling.
It's like they took a paint-by-numbers approach,
Used all the familiar tropes, but didn't add anything new.
No wonder the reviews called it out for being visually flat, lacking any real style.
No personality.
So we've got a film that's trying to do all these things.
Tackle big themes, scare you.
Be visually striking.
But it kind of falls short in every area.
Not a recipe for a memorable horror experience.
Not at all. But before we wrap up,
Yeah.
there's one more element I want to dig into. The whole supernatural element thing.
The black goo.
Yeah. Why include it at all? We talk about how it's unconvincing, out of place.
Visually and narratively, yeah.
But the reviews also talk about how it weakens the film's horror elements.
Okay, I'm listening.
Because slasher films, traditionally, their fear comes from this idea that
It could happen in real life.
the violence,
Right, the killers are human, sometimes masked, but always grounded.
makes it more unsettling because it feels possible.
Like it could happen to anyone.
Exactly. That's what makes it so scary.
So by adding something supernatural, you're kind of taking away that realism.
Yeah, shifting the focus. It's like if the killer has superpowers, it's not as scary because
It feels less relatable.
less grounded in our world.
And that's one of the criticisms here.
With Black Christmas.
They added the supernatural black goo, and they kind of diluted that core slasher element.
The fear of the familiar, the everyday.
Right, it's like they took a step back from the genre's
We're
roots.
trying to blend different things together.
And as we've seen, it didn't quite work.
So it sounds like this Black Christmas remake,
Could have benefited from a more focused approach,
leaning into what makes slashers so effective,
sticking to its strengths.
instead of trying to be everything to everyone.
Exactly. Sometimes less is more.
Especially in horror, right?
Atmosphere, tension, those can be so much more effective than
Over-the-top special effects.
or convoluted plots.
It's about knowing when to hold back.
Let the silence speak. Let the shadows do the work.
And Black Christmas might have learned that a little too late.
Maybe, but hey, hindsight's 20/20.
We can learn from these missteps
Absolutely, and maybe this conversation will inspire some future filmmakers
to strike that perfect balance.
between chills and substance.
Now that would be something.
It would, but for now, what's resonating with you?
What are your thoughts, your opinions?
Hold on to those as we head into the final part of our deep dive.
We'll be exploring the lasting impact of this film and what it means for the future of horror. All right, so we've spent the last two parts, really digging into those Black Christmas remake reviews.
Yeah, really breaking them down.
And let's be real, it wasn't exactly a hit.
Not the holiday horror we were hoping for.
But before we totally write it off, let's zoom out a bit, look at the bigger picture.
Okay, I'm with you.
What are the lasting, implications of this movie?
Implications,
And
yeah.
both for horror movies in general, Andy, for this whole conversation about, social commentary and art.
That's a great point, because even if a film isn't, successful,
This can still teach us something.
can spark conversations, make us think.
Right, exactly. And one thing that keeps popping up in these reviews is that whole challenge of finding that,
That balance.
yeah, that balance between entertainment and message.
Can a horror movie actually scare you and make you think at the same time?
Yeah, or does one have to, take a back seat to the other?
It's a question that comes up a lot, and honestly, I don't think there's one right answer.
It's tricky.
But what this Black Christmas remake really shows us is that it's all about the approach.
How you do it?
It's not enough to just sprinkle in some social commentary.
Like as a garnish or something.
Right.
Yeah.
One review said it needs to be woven into the fabric of the story.
The characters, the atmosphere.
It needs to feel organic, like it belongs there.
Otherwise, it feels like an afterthought.
Totally. Like someone just slapped it on at the last minute.
Instead of, actually weaving it into the narrative.
Precisely. It should feel natural, almost like it couldn't be any other way.
So give me an example, like a movie that does it well.
Okay, how about Rosemary's Baby? On the surface, it's this terrifying story about a woman losing control.
Of her body, her identity.
Right. But underneath, it's also this really powerful commentary on, women's autonomy.
The pressures they face.
Exactly.
It's almost like those, what are they called? Those pictures where you have to,
Magic eye pictures.
You have to look beyond the surface to see the deeper image.
And that takes skill, right?
For the filmmakers and the audience.
So that's where this Black Christmas remake stumbles.
It wants to make a statement.
But it does it at the cost of, the emotional depth.
The scary atmosphere.
It tells, instead of showing lectures, instead of letting the horror speak for itself.
Okay, so thinking about the future of horror then, do you think we'll see more movies trying to tackle these big social issues?
Or will they shy away from it, afraid to make the same mistakes?
Yeah, is this a trend or a warning sign?
Honestly, I think it's inevitable.
Inevitable, huh?
And exciting, really. Horror has always been a genre that reflects our anxieties, our fears.
A mirror to society's dark side.
Exactly. So it makes sense that filmmakers would use it to explore what's happening today, really.
The stuff that's keeping us up at night.
Social injustice, political turmoil, climate change, all of it.
Right, think about those classic monster movies.
Godzilla, Dracula, Frankenstein.
They were metaphors for the fears of their time.
Godzilla representing nuclear anxiety.
Zombies in Night of the Living Dead, reflecting that Cold War paranoia.
Exactly. And that tradition's still alive today.
We're seeing it in movies like Get Out.
Spree, His House, so many others.
So it's not going away, is it?
Not at all. Because horror, when it's done right, it can be so much more than just
jump scares and gore.
Right. It can be a tool for social commentary, a way to confront those uncomfortable truths.
And start conversations.
Exactly. But the key, like we've been talking about,
finding that balance.
You got to do it in a way that's both entertaining and thought-provoking.
You can't sacrifice the chills for the message or the message for the chills.
You need both.
Find that sweet spot where they work together.
Where they amplify each other.
And that's the challenge, right?
It is. To create a film that's both scary and dim makes you think.
A film that sticks with you, not just because of the scares, but because it made you
question something, see the world differently.
Now that's a movie I want to see.
Me too.
But for now, we'll leave you with this final thought. What if Black Christmas had flipped the script?
Flipped the script.
Yeah, what if they focused on the stairs first?
Got the audience hooked with the horror.
And then layered in the social commentary, more subtly.
More organically, like we were talking about.
Do you think it would have worked better?
It's an interesting question, and we'll never know for sure, but it really highlights how complex it is to make horror that truly resonates.
Horror that entertains and challenges us.
Exactly.
So keep thinking about it. Share your thoughts on this movie, on the role of social commentary and art, all of it.
Because these conversations, these critiques, they help us push the boundaries of what horror can be.
What it can say about the world we live in.
And who knows, maybe someday we'll get that perfect horror film.
The one that scares us, A&D makes us think deeply.
Fingers crossed.
But until then, happy viewing, everyone.
Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. You know how much we love uncovering those little hidden gems about films, right?
Yeah, those behind-the-scenes details, the stuff most people wouldn't even think about.
Exactly. And this time we're getting festive, but with a bit of a dark twist. We're going deep into the 2019 Black Christmas remake.
Ooh, a remake. Always interesting territory.
Right. Especially with a horror classic like Black Christmas. I mean, the original, so iconic.
Yeah.
So we've got this document here. It's called C.txt.
CTXT, short and sweet, huh?
Yeah, gets right to the point. And it's full of all these, well, curiosities about the making of the film.
Okay, so what's the mission for this deep dive? We're going to bust some myths, uncover some controversies.
All of that. I want to know what sets this film apart,
Yeah.
What makes it tick? How does it stray? Or maybe even clash with the original? By the end of this, we should all have some pretty cool trivia to drop at our next holiday horror movie night. Sound good?
Sounds like a plan. Holiday horror trivia, my specialty.
Okay, so first thing that jumped out at me from this document, it says that the 2019 version isn't really a direct remake. More like a reimagining, I guess they'd call
A
it.
reimagining, huh? Yeah, that's a bit of a tightrope walk, isn't it? You've got the fans of the original, they're expecting certain things.
Right, like you got to pay homage.
Yeah.
But also, you're trying to do something new.
Yeah. I mean, some remakes do it well, some, well, not so much.
It's a tricky balance, for sure.
Like, remember that Nightmare on Elm Street remake? They tried to go all dark and gritty.
Yeah, but did it really capture the essence of Freddy? Like that balance of humor and horror?
It's hard to say. I mean, for me, the humor is part of what makes Freddy.
Okay, so this Black Christmas reimagining, right? The document here points out one big change. They went for a PG-13 rating.
PG-13. Whoa, that's a far cry from the original's R rating.
Big difference, right? I mean, the original, it's got those raw, intense, truly terrifying moments.
Yeah, like you're right there with the characters feeling that dread.
Exactly. So toning it down to PG-13, does that, I don't know, does it take away from the impact? Does it lose some of the edge?
Yeah, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Are they trying to appeal to a wider audience? Maybe a younger crowd?
Yeah. I guess that's the trade-off, right? Reach more people, but
Yeah.
maybe sacrifice some of the grit that horror fans expect.
It's a gamble, for sure.
Definitely a gamble. But then it's not just the rating that's different.
Oh, what else? Spill the tea.
So apparently they introduced supernatural elements into this version.
Supernatural. Whoa, okay, that's a major departure. The original was pretty grounded in reality, right?
Very much so. Very much so.
Yeah.
Like the terror came from the unknown, the stalker, that chilling phone call, real world fears.
Right, like something that could actually happen makes it all the more scary.
Exactly. So bringing in supernatural stuff, that changes the whole vibe, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, think about like Friday the 13th. The first few films, Jason was, well, humanish.
Yeah, right. But then as the series went on, he became what? Like unkillable, supernatural.
Exactly. It changes the rules, doesn't it? Like, how do you defeat something that's basically a force of nature?
Right. So I wonder, how did they handle that in Black Christmas? Like, does it work? Does it add to the story, or does it feel, I don't know, out of place?
I guess it depends on how they integrated it.
And speaking of integration, did you see anything in that document about how this whole supernatural angle came about? Was it the director's idea?
Ah, yeah. Speaking of the director, Sophia Takal, right?
Yeah, Sophia Takal. Now, she comes from a pretty indie film background.
Indie, huh? That's interesting. So not like big budget horror, more like character-driven stuff.
Exactly. Like her previous film, Always Shine, it's a psychological thriller, deals with female rivalry, ambition, all that.
Oh, I've heard of that one. Really intense, right? Like messes with your head a bit.
Oh, totally. So knowing her background, it makes you think, how did she approach Black Christmas? Like, did she bring those same indie sensibilities to a more mainstream genre?
I'd be curious to see how that plays out, especially with a story like Black Christmas, which is, already pretty heavy on female characters and their relationships.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, did she use the horror, the slasher element, as a way to explore those themes on a bigger stage?
Yeah, it's like taking those indie film ideas and giving them a horror movie makeover.
Okay, so we've got the reimagining aspect, the PG-13 rating, the supernatural elements, the director's background, all pretty interesting stuff, right? But wait, there's more.
More. Lay it on me. I'm ready for another twist.
Brace yourself. This document says they filmed the entire movie in just 27 days.
27 days. Seriously, that's insane. Like a holiday rush, but for a whole movie.
Right. It's like wrapping presents at warp speed.
Yeah.
And feature films, they usually take, months to shoot?
Yeah, easily months. So 27 days, that's going to put some serious pressure on everyone.
Totally. And it makes you wonder, did it impact the quality? Like, did they have to cut corners?
I'd be curious to see if there are any scenes that feel, I don't know, rushed. Like maybe the pacing is off or the editing's a bit choppy.
Yeah. Or maybe there are moments where the atmosphere isn't quite there, like they didn't have time to build the suspense properly.
I'm thinking maybe that library scene, remember, it felt kind of quick, like they just blew through it.
I see what you mean. Yeah, like the tension wasn't really there. It's like they needed more time to let it breathe.
Totally. And with such a tight schedule, I bet there were tough decisions to make, like what to prioritize, what to sacrifice.
Right. Okay. So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've got the reimagining, the rating shift, the supernatural twist, the director's unique vision, the crazy fast filming schedule.
My head's spinning. It's like all these pieces of the puzzle coming together to make this new version of Black Christmas.
Exactly. And it's amazing how all these behind-the-scenes details can change how you view a film. Like suddenly you're seeing things differently, noticing things you might have missed before.
Right. It's like you're not just watching a movie anymore. You're understanding the choices, the decisions that shaped it.
Absolutely. So the next time you watch this Black Christmas, remember everything we've talked about today, the director's vision, the constraints, the creative risks, and ask yourself, does knowing all this enhance the experience? Does it make you appreciate it more, or maybe even critique it differently?
That's the fun part, right? You get to be the judge. You get to decide what works, what doesn't.
Exactly. So whether you're a diehard fan of the original or just curious about this new take, remember, it's more than just a remake. It's a reimagining with its own unique story to tell.
And who knows, maybe this deep dive will inspire you to revisit the film and see it through a whole new lens.
Exactly. So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the world of film.
And happy holidays, everyone, even if they're a little bit, horrified.
Stay spooky, everyone.
Yeah, stay spooky.
And we'll catch you in the next deep dive.
See you then.
Bye.